Adam is the co-founder of the PCCC, the Progressive Campaign, I can never remember.
It's cool. It's Progressive Change Campaign Committee.
Progressive Change Campaign Committee.
Yeah, the Progressive Campaign Change Committee is actually a lawyer in California, so please don't get us confused. Way different.
Also, boldprogressives.org.
Boldprogressives.org.
See, I remember your URL, but not. I remember the important stuff.
Yeah, we did the master stroke of having 3 brands. We're the PCCC, we're the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, we're boldprogressives.org, just to confuse lots of people.
It confuses people.
Yeah.
We've spoken many times. We have spent many times at the at this conference over the years.
That's right.
We are apparently we're moderating. I am moderating a panel that you've put together.
It's going to be great.
What is the title of the panel?
It's called Why Joe Biden is the Least Electable Major Democrat in 2020.
I thought it was is Joe Biden the least electable?
Oh, or is that an open? I'm pretty sure we have a point of view on that.
Right. Well,
it's actually no. It's why Joe Biden is the least electable.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just moderating the panel.
Yeah. Okay.
And so,
Amy Allison from She the People will be joining us, and Alejandra Rojas from Justice Democrats.
We just played an interview with her from Justice Democrats.
Fantastic.
I have yet to meet Amy, I think, but it should be interesting conversation.
Will be good.
And we'll test that premise. All right, but let's. I have no need for you to give a preview because I think I'm going to record it, and so we'll be able to play it in the coming days. Maybe we could stream it live. That's conceivable. But we will record it in video and put it up.
Okay.
It'll look good.
Sounds great.
So, Adam.
Yes.
Give me your thoughts of where we are in terms of what's happening in Congress. Are you focused now on the presidential campaign?
We're focused on both. This week, our group is pretty vocal in defending Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from the attacks from Nancy Pelosi. It's interesting how everybody talks about unity and no circling firing squad, and then progressives can get attacked by the establishment, progressives can be attacked by the conservatives, and that's fine. But if you fight back, stop the fighting. Right. We even put out a sticker that said, I stand with AOC. And some people are like, why are you putting out that sticker? It just merely says, I stand with AOC. And people are like, stop it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Now, the next day, there's actually a street artist in D.C. who, at 1 o'clock in the morning a couple nights ago, started putting up signs with Pelosi's face and the words, visited the camps yet? And they started, I put it on Twitter, started going viral, and we decided to actually make a campaign out of it. So actually now, if people are on the boldprogressives.org email list, we have a petition to Pelosi being like, visit the camps and bring Josh Gottheimer and Elaine Luria and Abigail Spanberger and the other conservative Democrats with you. Because if you guys are going to be undermining AOC and others who are trying to help the kids at the border, at least see it for yourselves.
It is pretty stunning that you hear a lot about things like purity tests are problematic, et cetera, et cetera. They may be, but I mean, this is just you've got to toe the line and not get out in front of the sort of the capitulation that is going on here. I mean, it feels like Nancy Pelosi has decided in like the second quarter of a basketball game, we're going to a four corners. We're just going to run out the clock. And nobody's told her, like, well, you just can't do that. Like what is supposed to fill the time between now and if the Democrats aren't going to do any oversight, they're not going to impeach. What's supposed to fill the time between
messaging bills?
How many more messaging bills do we have?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, there's.
This is the thing that we just run up against all the time, which is that conventional wisdom in D.C. is so out of touch with the actual conversation in the country, right? It's this idea of like, oh, if AOC wasn't talking about X, Y, or Z, we would just get so much more attention for this random bill that no one's ever heard of on the House floor, right? It's like, no, that is not true, right?
Are they telling themselves that? Is that what they're? Is that what they think this is?
That is actually what they think a lot of this is. Yeah, and then. Wow, am I breaking news to you? Fascinating.
No, I had no idea that they actually think the reason why people aren't paying attention, because 3 weeks ago, Mary Bustos or Sherry Bustos was complaining that no one was paying attention to the bills. Well, 3 weeks ago, we weren't having this fight between AOC and Pelosi either.
Right. Yeah, it's again broken in every way. So the other part of the broken, there we go. Part of the broken. Should we stop right here?
No, just slide over. The other part of the broken.
The other part of the broken conventionalism is
slide down just a little bit, guys, so that we can get Ryan on camera. There you go, Ryan. Just a little bit further down, a little bit towards. I know it's uncomfortable, but Adam, move down a little bit. There we go. All right, here we go.
What's up, y'all?
There we go. Ryan Grimm of The Intercept and, of course, TYT. What do you put on your badge, Ryan? You just put The Intercept.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually tell them to put anything. So that's what they went with.
All right, fair enough. I got Ring of Fire on my badge, and so...
Ring of Fire, nice. I'm going to add TYT right now, actually.
All right.
And I'm going to add Strong Arm Press.
Oh, that's right. Everybody, we spoke to you about your book, and you have your whole press. All right, well, Adam and I were just talking about how apparently there's a feeling on the Hill amongst the Democrats that the reason why America is not paying attention to the messaging bills, and I think the messaging bills are great. I think it's important. I think we should be. But the reason why America is not paying attention to them is because AOC has been testy with Nancy Pelosi. Is that what the theory is?
Well, I think that Pelosi and her leadership crew will look for like any answer to explain why the public isn't paying attention to their messaging bills other than the obvious one, that the public has sense. And like, A, knows that these messaging bills aren't going to become law through Mitch McConnell, and B, knows that they're mostly just fortifying the status quo. There's some of them that actually would make significant change in the country, like the H.R. 1, which is the anti-corruption bill.
Right.
But I think the public probably also has a lot of suspicion that, if they knew that H.R. 1 had passed and what was in it, whether they would actually pass it if they knew that a Democratic president would sign it. Because they've seen this before with the Republicans repealing Obamacare how many times? Yeah.
52 times. Yes. And I think like the value of these bills really have more value to the progressive base as a marker and holding them to that in the future, right? Like, so the general public, I mean, at what point do they give up that ghost? Or is this sort of like a sunk cost type of thing? Like they can never admit that their strategy did not work.
Can't, right? How do you admit that? If you admit that, you have to go. So, I mean, it depends on what you mean by strategy.
Well, I mean strategy as in like that hypothetical thing that should take place when you run a major political party. Like that type of thing. Like, because I will say this. The reason why nobody noticed H.R. 1 was because Nancy Pelosi was shitting on Ilhan Omar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go back and you look at the week in the run-up, she decided to engage in that fight.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, with a whimper, they introduced H.R. 1 or they, champion it. I mean, They shot themselves in the foot. And it suggests to me that they lack a strategy, they lack a plan to execute the strategy, and that at the end of the day, they
also lack an understanding of the current politics. And I was actually talking to a Democratic leadership aide about that moment just recently, and they thought it was a fairly straightforward play. Ilhan Omar talked about Benjamins and AIPAC. Congress is going to condemn her. Next, that's the kind of thing they would have done in 10 minutes in 1994, and then moved on to the next thing. And he said that they were just floored at the reaction. They just did not see it coming. They were stunned to see so many people supporting her and condemning Democratic leadership. And so they had to then recalculate, say, oh, okay, this politics of Israel have changed, huh?
Right.
Interesting.
But they didn't notice that when
you can't notice everything.
But did they not notice it when Tim Kaine, of all people, wouldn't go see Bibi Netanyahu when he was speaking on the floor? Like, are they not, I don't understand. I just...
Well, I can't help you understand that.
It wasn't just that the politics of Israel have changed. It's that given the current internet world, people like AOC and Ilhan have massive grassroots following that they didn't have in
Right.
1994.
Right.
Right.
The public has more of a voice through these people, and they can't just shit all over
Right,
progressives.
things that
basically.
used to be just an inside play are now both.
Yeah, right. So we're talking about before is that there's so much broken conventional wisdom, and I feel like it's broken conventional wisdom compounded upon more broken conventional wisdom. So let's use Medicare for all and this recent child detention thing as two examples, right? Medicare for all, the broken conventional wisdom in DC is, oh, that's not popular, or it's not popular in swing districts, right? When if you make the case correctly, it's overwhelmingly popular. You just need to take on the big insurance companies and make clear that you can keep your doctors. Nobody loves their insurance companies. But because of that, it's a nuisance when progressives bring up things like Medicare for all, right? So part of the messaging bills usually equal lowest common denominator. Like, what are the lowest principles that we can all agree on? Don't rock that boat because that's hurting the frontliners, these red to blue people who are scared, right? Same with the child detention stuff. Like, what could be more American or human than children should not be in cages, don't separate children from their parents? Honestly, like, that should, if we're going to engage in the immigration fight, that is the equivalent of the first trimester abortion in the abortion fight. Like, we want to be arguing on that turf, right? We don't want to be arguing about late-term abortion necessarily, right? There's other places that they can move the debate, but we should be willing to say, no, we're going to stand up for these children.
This is the
Everyone will agree with
lowest
us.
of low-hanging fruit.
It should be.
The only other thing that could be more low-hanging fruit is that you should actively investigate and criticize the former prosecutor who gave a sweetheart deal to a child trafficker. Right? Like,
Right.
that's also pretty low-hanging fruit.
So all of this stuff is seen as controversial in D.C. when it's not in the real country, and that means if progressives are doing the will of the people on the outside and trying to insert it on the inside, they are then hit back, right? So we were talking before about how it's fine for Pelosi to hit AOC, but if AOC pushes back, that's not unity.
Right.
And it's fine for Josh Gottheimer to attack AOC, that's fine. But if she hits him, oh my gosh, you're hurting the frontliners.
Gottheimer,
So it's really broken in many levels.
It's I mean, I feel like there should be some type of law that they should pass, or a rule in the caucus that you need to hire, there has to be some, or at least one, like, token hire of somebody who has not been in democratic politics for like 25 years. Right? Like, every office has got to have at least one person they go to, like, hey, just to check this bounce check off.
They do. They have their kids.
With all due respect to Christine Pelosi, I still haven't forgiven her for humanizing George Bush in her documentary, frankly.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Well, that was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, but...
Might have been Alex Pelosi. Was that different?
Was it...
Oh, yeah, that was Alex Pelosi.
Oh, it was Alex Pelosi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Christine
Well,
does the environment stuff.
All right. Well, my apologies then. But nevertheless, my apologies to both of them. I think it's going to be outside your family.
I think that's fair.
I think it's going to be fair. So where does
Christine Pelosi might literally be a lawyer from California.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go.
Her picture.
Thank you.
Sorry. Anyway, sorry.
Thank
I believe
you.
in comedy that's called a callback.
That is a callback. Yes. I'm not sure about the comedy, but it's a callback.
If it was funny, it would have been
Laughing
a callback.
liberally
It was
around
funny.
here.
Yeah. So all right. Well, so what happens? Like, do we just keep going in this, like, sort of? Nancy Pelosi thinks there's some type of clock she can run out, and then everybody's gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, forget it.
Yeah, she thinks there's a clock running out. She thinks that the August recess bleeds into September, and then you've got Labor Day, then you've got, a couple weeks, and then you've got Thanksgiving, and then you've got a Christmas break, and then Iowa's voting. Like, that's her. That's how she's seeing the
And
calendar.
then she thinks once the voting starts that nobody's going to pay attention
Right.
to Congress.
Now you're voting on who's going to be president. Why do you impeach the one who's currently sitting there?
There is a serious, I think, like, cultural problem with the Democratic Party. Because I think, like, that's been the problem with Democrats, is that they're too reliant on the presidency or too focused exclusively on, like, let's elect a president, let's walk away.
Although I'm not even sure Pelosi's thinking about that. I think to her, it's those frontliners. Like, to her, so we're facing a fascist in the White House, children dying on the border, now 11 years to make, fundamental structural changes to save the planet from catastrophe. And her top concern really is these frontliners. And she would justify it by saying, well, if the frontliners don't win, then you're never going to hold power in order to address all the things you say you want to address. But in order for those frontliners to win, in her mind, you can't ever try to exercise that power. So it's a self-defeating thing. But so I don't even know if she's worried about. I mean, of course she'd like to see Trump beaten, but the House majority is her number one goal. Period.
But does she think? But are those two things mutually exclusive? Like, is there a scenario where Donald Trump wins and the Democrats can maintain their majority?
Yeah, because it's the fascinating phenomenon of the suburbs, which are, which is where Democrats picked up a lot of their gains in 2018. They were pissed off at Donald Trump, but and they'll still be pissed off at Donald Trump in 2020, so could return Democrats to the House majority. But that doesn't mean that he can't run up enough numbers in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania to also at the same time get reelected. So I think there's a conceivable mood in the country that could do both. He would absolutely lose the popular vote again.
Right.
But there is certainly a path that he could do that and then hold on to those three key states.
But if the suburbs are going to vote against Donald Trump, then they're not paying attention to, wow, they're having too many oversight hearings. Like, I don't like how many oversight hearings that show me how corrupt the guy I hate is. I just don't understand
I think there's a real risk of all of those people who did all of that organizing and door knocking and phone banking and donating that gave Democrats their huge wins in 2018 are now asking themselves, why did we do this?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like I understand how it can work that way, where she loses because they're not doing anything. But I don't understand what the argument is that people are going to see that we're investigating a guy who let a pedophile off easy. Or people are seeing that we're investigating how he didn't pay his taxes. Or we're investigating how Betsy DeVos owns stocks in these...
No, it absolutely makes no sense because, like you said, they won the majority on anger at Donald Trump in these particular districts. So, of course, they want you to go after Trump. That's why they voted for you. So they're not going to get mad if you go after Trump.
Of course. Are you guys noticing much more energy around challenges to incumbents at this?
More than before. I don't know. You've been engaged in primaries before people cared about them. Are you seeing more this time?
Yeah, I think for a couple reasons. One, last time people were so paranoid about we must take back the House that some people were like, even if I technically agree with this progressive challenge, like I just want to focus on taking back the House, right? And now it's like, all right, other things are happening. I can divide my attention. But also AOC proved the concept, right? She proved that, not only can we win these races, which would have been nice by itself, but and they're a game changer once they get in there. So the idea of let's elect more AOCs is a phraseology that we're applying to other candidates now. And I will say Justice Democrats has been, I think, very thorough about the types of candidates that they're vetting. The people who are truly viable. I think last time they had a wide game, like let's endorse 100 or more. I think this time they're going to be...
They might not have endorsed Ocasio-Cortez in this new model.
Well, well, I don't know about that. But basically, they have a prism for decision making.
Probably.
Okay.
The demographics work for the district, and she clearly was articulate and good on, good.
You're saying they would have?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I mean, statistically speaking, the odds of them doing it would have been less, right? I mean, but it's hard. Right. It's hard to go back and look at that. But the idea is they're being more focused this time.
People who are truly committed to running strong races, people who fit their district, incumbents who are extra out of touch, places where in the past there's low turnout, which is in a weird way an advantage for us in a primary, if that maintains, right? We got messed up with Tom Carper in Delaware, who is the most corporate senator out there. He does not represent a very blue state, but because of very high turnout compared to other places, and a somewhat weak campaign running against him, we lost. So I think they're looking for a combination of things, and we're
That's
very happy
an interesting
that.
phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? Because on some level, that has been the conservative path to victory has been a maybe not as many votes, but votes that you can count on in off-year elections.
Yeah.
And it's about the depth of their commitment, not necessarily the breadth. And it feels like we're in an era where these primaries can be won not necessarily with the number of people, but the depth of commitment of those people, because they're going to show up no matter what. And that having that force, I mean, it's almost like the podcast model versus the radio model.
Wow, say more.
Are you being facetious?
Not really, say more.
Oh, well, I mean, this show, I mean, when I launched this show, for instance, I knew and was talking to Marin, I knew that Marin was going to make more money on advertising, but I might have an opportunity to make more on membership, because this, talking about politics, has a deeper connection to people than, you know, with all due respect to Mark Maron, although he doesn't care. You know, him trying to hook up with some actress by, you know, talking about himself.
Right.
But, you know, people love that show, a lot more accessibility, but they wouldn't necessarily pay to be a member.
Yeah.
Depth, right? As opposed to breadth.
That?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like okay.
Yeah.
Freemium.
Freemium.
That's another word that has to do with internet.
So anyway, it's worth putting a couple specific races on the radar.
Right.
So one, I think he just announced. Did Alex Morris just announce against Richie Neal? I heard that. That is true. So Richie Neal is a powerful Ways and Means Committee chairman who dragged his feet for months in requesting Trump's tax returns, and dragged his feet for months.
Michael Brooks is old congressman, I believe, out in Springfield.
That was worth the interruption.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so dragged his feet for months, holding Medicare for All hearings. And when he actually requested Trump's tax returns, some people in the media treat him like a hero. Like, wow, look at this bold action. It's like, wait, he was dragged kicking and screaming by progressives. We were out there saying, we're going to primary him, right? Well, still, he's an old school, you know.
He turned it down from New York State. We're going to give him Trump's state taxes, and he said no.
No, thank you. No, thank you. We're good. Right.
We're good here.
We're good here. So Alex Morris, young, I believe he's gay, mayor of Holyoke, in Massachusetts, is going to be running a very vibrant campaign against him, and that could be similar to AOC, a shell shocker for the establishment. If the Ways and Means Committee chairman, who's putting the kibosh on things like Medicare for All, I think also Green New Deal, goes down, it sends a signal of, our prism for decision making was a little bit wrong, right? We need a big victory like that against someone who's a crusty old insider. You know,
it's interesting because I thought what you would see in terms of AOC to Crowley would be like what we saw with David Bratt to Cantor. Now Bratt is gone in a year and he did nothing. AOC has been ascended. She is probably the most exciting political figure, particularly congressperson.
Since
I don't know.
Newt Gingrich.
Yeah, honestly, right?
Yeah.
And yet totally dismissed insofar as it having any type of like greater repercussions. Like Cantor was like, this is a shot across the bow for every single Republican. Lindsey Graham has got to start talking like Donald Trump, as soon as...
And they all adjusted.
Because
they were told to by Fox News as well, which the left doesn't have.
That's right.
With all due respect to the institution that we're speaking with right now.
I understand. I understand. I'm doing my best.
All due respect to The Intercept and TYT.
Right.
They don't listen.
They don't listen. And it's going to be interesting to see if someone like Neal goes down, if they're going to recognize like that district is largely rural, one small mid-sized city, Springfield, but there's a lot of it's a fairly rural area. Yeah. And if they're just going to say, oh, it's Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And it's Western Massachusetts, or if they're going to say like, okay, this puts just about everybody in play. It's going to be interesting to see if these threats will have the desired effect. It'll change any behaviors.
Yeah.
But
do you want to hit the Cuellar race and the Elliot Engel race, or no?
I mean, those are a couple. I wasn't persuaded maybe I'll come around to it, that Cuellar was a great target. Cuellar is probably the most right-wing Democrat. And so there's two sides to this. So he's not that much of a internal player. Like he's not a, he's not a Richie Neal. He doesn't run Ways and Means. He's not in leadership. And so for that reason, I thought that he's also extremely powerful and popular back home. And he comes from like a dynasty. Doesn't mean he can't be beaten, but so the question is it worth the resources to go after him? Given those things, the other argument is that he's a powerful voice on immigration and on a lot of fiscal issues in very destructive ways inside the caucus. And so by taking that voice out, you're taking away one of the more destructive voices that a lot of the centrists who could go either way hear him say, oh, well, this is a Hispanic member from Texas and he's saying this, so
right,
I'm going to
cover for
I'll go with him. So in that
policies.
sense, taking him out with a strong progressive like a Jessica Cisneros, could be significant. Eliot Engel, I'm not convinced he's not going to retire. It'll be interesting, but he's chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, would be a huge shot at the kind of hawkish wing of the party if he manages to get toppled.
Who else do you think we're going to see go?
Lipinski has a very good chance of losing, but I don't think him going down would be seen as anything other than like an unpopular guy who's out of step with his district going down in the kind of way that you could lose a primary in 2012 and it would just be seen as losing a primary.
Right.
Well, let me say a couple things on that. So first, Dan Lipinski, the Democratic co-chair of the pro-life committee, voted against Obamacare, essentially votes with Wall Street.
It's against everything Democrats are for.
And it's like a 15-point Hillary district, so there's no reason for him to be representing. His dad gave him this seat, basically, right? So up against Maureen Newman, progressive challenger, Medicare for all, everything. One significance I do see here is it's a very early primary. I think it's like the first week of March, right? Which means Alexandria, hers was like July.
June, yeah, end of June.
End of June. So early means it can have ripple effects the rest of the cycle, right? There could be a fundraising boost in the step of every other progressive challenger if he goes down. So I see that as like helpful in the calendar sense.
Well, there's a couple other primary challengers
Could that
on the
also
ballot.
have the opposite effect, though, of like putting a bunch of people on notice who have been sleeping, or are those people no
They're
longer
awake.
sleeping?
They're wide awake. And they're so wide awake that, so there are two other people running for the Lipinski seat that haven't done a lot in terms of campaigning and fit the mold of this old machine tactic of putting people on the ballot just to draw votes away. Like people who are upset with Lipinski are going to vote against him. And so if you put 3 people on the ballot, that dilutes the opposition. You see that a lot in these kind of machine elections. They may be genuine candidates, like and think that they have some path to victory, but they haven't been showing it, and they know that Newman came within a couple points of winning previously and has the edge.
All right, we're just
What's going on here? What's happening here?
Oh, it's just watching Virgil. Oh,
what it is
okay.
Not exactly clear.
No,
Okay.
we're just we have other guests in the green room, and they're waiting in the green room, and they'll be over in a second.
Okay.
But
let's give it to them.
Well, yeah,
Do it.
we'll do that. But all right, so this is going to be an exciting primary season. It sounds like.
And if anybody wants to understand where all this came from, they need to read the book.
Yeah, how is your book doing? Because I feel like your book has gotten a lot of attention, and it really does capture this moment. Or at least it explains how we got to this moment.
Yeah, it's well timed. Now, this is a country that doesn't read, so I'm not going to retire on this book.
Is there a book on tape yet?
It's coming.
Who's going to read it?
A reader of my newsletter read it, actually, like a subscriber to my newsletter. He said he emailed me. He's like, "Hey, I do this for a living. You want me to do your book?" I said, "Great."
Well, that's pretty
Let's
good.
do it. Yeah. And the book was copy edited and edited in interesting ways by like readers of the newsletter. I allowed people to see an early draft of it, and they made very useful comments, like this is confusing. I'd love to hear more about this. So the spirit of the book was actually brought to bear on the production of it too.
That's pretty cool. That's an interesting way of. Is anybody publishing books like that?
No, just us.
What do you mean by us?
Strong Arm Press.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other books coming out in the near future?
Yes. What do we got? We have a very cool book coming on Lane Evans.
Lane Evans,
who was a populist. First guy to ever endorse Barack Obama.
Okay.
A populist Illinois congressman who represented a Republican-leaning or centrist district for decades, but did it in a way where he just took the fight to the Republicans and took the fight to business. The seat is now held by Sherry Bustos, who claims that there's just no other way to do it, except Lane Evans just a couple cycles ago was doing it. I think he retired in 2004 because he got ALS.
Fascinating. Any children's books coming out?
There is a fascinating children's book coming in September, I believe, by Stephanie Taylor. It is one of the best children's books.
My co-founder. Yes.
But it's one of the best children's books I've read. The moment I saw it, I was like, oh, this we have to do this.
How old?
It's like a good. I think it's anything from 2 to 8, 9.
Is it a title?
What is the title?
I'm not sure actually.
It's something like.
You can do anything or something like that.
You can do it. Yeah, you can do anything.
Yeah.
It's a cool book about the power of imagination and translating into like real world accomplishments. It's a cool.
And your book is called
We've Got People.
We've got people.
All right,
Majority.
Ryan Grimm.
It's the majority.
Adam Green.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. All right, folks. Now coming to well.